what they don't realize is in any population of people, especially a family, there are unique strengths and gifts, your unique abilities. There's something that each member of your family does better than any of the rest. And what I'm able to do is interview the family member and find out who's good at what. Taxes are not the biggest obstacle anymore. The largest barrier, I think, is the cost.
Good morning and welcome to the Darling Difference podcast. And my guest today is Brent Turner from Agri, and he's got an enormous amount of experience that he's going to share with us, talking about kind of legacy planning, cash flow planning, things like that in a truly niche market. And I'm not going to steal any of his thunder, but
Okay.
I wanted to say thank you for taking the time, Brent, and sharing this information with my audience, your audience, and helping to get the word out. So with that being said, first thing I want to do is if you can just spend a little bit of time talking about yourself as the owner and, kind of your background and, your business in general.
Sure, thanks. Well, it's good to be with you. I started out in business when I was 22 years old. I was a recent college graduate with a degree in animal science, and one of the last things that I found out was that I was not supposed to be a scientist. So I didn't have a lot of direction going into college as far as occupation, what I should be doing. But one of the last things I did was I took a test to see what I was best suited for. And I found out that I was supposed to be a facilitator, a teacher, or a coach. And I wasn't athletic, so I decided to see what occupation I could do as a teacher. And I didn't really want to teach. And facilitating seems to, that seems to be something I like to do to help people along. And I searched for an occupation that would allow me to kind of utilize those strengths. And so I just kind of stumbled into being a financial planner, and that was 34 years ago. So I've been doing this a while. I've spent most of my time working with business owners and farmers and ranchers. And I was an ag kid growing up. I was ag major in college, and still involved with that from the periphery. I've always had a passion for agriculture. So a couple of years ago, I decided to I've been in the securities business for 30 years, 28 years, and I said, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore. So I found a place for my clients to go and be served well, and a gentleman to help me with that, and so he kind of just took that over for me, and I just said, what am I going to do next? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to my passion, which is farming and ranching. And went to the Family Enterprise Advisor program up in Canada, which is a phenomenal program. If anybody is interested in working with families in the multi-generational space, that is a must. That's a great deep dive into what needs to actually take place for enterprises to continue to the next generation. So I took that and built a company called Agri. And we're in Columbus, Montana. I'm originally from Tennessee, been in Montana 4 or 5 years now, and absolutely love it. And I'm surrounded by ranchers that don't have plans in place to help the next generation step into the enterprise. So I've just kind of my life's work, I think, is where I've spent working with business owners and helping them find money that they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily, and taking that training and that philosophy to the agricultural community. So I think this is my life's work. I really do.
Awesome. And so, you've got a breadth of experience there. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of the changes over the last, 20 or 30 years in terms of this? Because, obviously, the market has changed. And so.
Well, the stakes have gotten higher. Yeah. Is the biggest thing that's taken place. Most of the time people think about farms and ranches and businesses, or what's going to be their biggest obstacle, and they always say taxes. Well, when I started in my practice 30 something years ago, the federal exemption for estate tax was $600,000. So they were correct at that time. That was a huge factor. Now it's 30 million. So most small business owners don't really bump up against that. And if you do, there's some planning you can do. But there's just, taxes are not the biggest obstacle anymore. The largest barrier, I think, is the cost to entry. So, because most of these ranchers are, they paid this amount for their money, for their ground, and now it's worth this amount. It's just had an exponential effect on the price value of real estate. And so the factor of being able to buy into a ranch or start a ranch now from scratch is without a massive amount of money, that it's just really, really very difficult, if not cost prohibitive all the way around. So
Unless
we
unless
have
your
to,
last name's Turner, right?
unless your last name's Turner and you're not related to Brent.
I throw a little optional
Yeah,
humor in
yeah.
there.
Uncle Ted is he's been accumulating wealth in real estate here in Montana for a long time and all over the country. But the stakes are much higher, Wally, because if you've got a 10 or a $20 million ranch, that's a massive enterprise. And if you don't have a plan of action written down and documented, and to get that moved to the next generation without a major wealth transfer, you're in trouble. If you don't have that plan, you're in trouble. And so it requires beginning. It just requires to have conversations. And I every single day I'm dealing with farmers and ranchers, and their concerns are the same, and their barriers are also the same. They all have a stigma about I don't want to give it away yet. So when they do decide to transfer to the next generation, a lot of things can go wrong. So we try to get to that in the beginning and get way out in front of that, because I don't like to see clients lose money. And truthfully, if we don't do this right, millions and millions and millions of dollars will leave the family enterprise in the transition. And I'm not talking about taxes either. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so from what I understand, I'm kind of new in this space, but what I understand is, say you have a generational situation where maybe they have a son or a couple sons and a daughter or something like that, but not everybody wants to continue in
right.
the business, and
Yes.
so I imagine that's if you don't do the planning to allow for that to be dealt with at the time of the current
Transfer.
generation, yeah, transfer, then, it becomes, how do you come up with, say it's a $15 million, how do you come up with $5 or $10 million to
Right.
buy out that, the siblings that don't want to be involved?
Well, the unfortunate thing about it is, or the reality of it is, you're going to either do this by design or by default.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the neat part of the planning that we do is we're designers, and then we facilitate the process to help people avoid those massive wealth transfers. And so, where do wealth transfers occur? Most time, people think about, well, I'll just leave it to my kids and let them deal with it. We're talking about a business.
Hmm.
We're literally talking about a business that we're talking about transitioning. Farming and ranching is a business. Small business is a business. And whenever you have an interruption, that interruption causes money to leave your balance sheet going to somebody else's balance sheet. And unfortunately, not all family members are created equal. Not all of them want to ranch. Not all of them want to farm. Not all of them have the capability to continue the business. They've got their own interest in occupation. So you really wind up with, if we don't get this get out of this, you wind up with sports. That is extremely expensive. One of the neat things that we're creating here that we do nothing calculated. It's just it's an app that we've created that will help people see, all right, here's the pitfalls. And if you have a $20 million ranch and you don't do this, and the meter starts running backwards, and so you can kind of see your net worth eroding by these common features that happen when plans are not put in place. So you spend $3 million on probate, you spend $3 million on trying to get somebody caught up to speed, or you lose production because you can't get a crop in, or you lose borrowing power because mom or dad was the chief lender at an institution that was responsible for helping you put a crop in or buy calves or whatever. And you have to reestablish those relationships. Those are wealth transfers. And so you can go from 20 to 12 in a hurry just by, and then if you have to divide an estate to buy out a sibling or something like that, you're going to wind up with, a substantial amount of difference in the value from the time you started. And all of that's unnecessary. So we just try to get in front of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talked last time, you were talking about, a family where the son maybe wanted to continue the business, but he had a sister that didn't even work in the business, but you were able, through her skill set, to bring her in, more of a different role that maybe the brother wasn't.
Well, you're talking about the Hartwells. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with the Hartwells are a fictional family that I created, and from that, I took the experience that I have found a lot of commonalities in this work, and created a book. And the book is called "The Piece of Land." For those of you that can see the screen, there's the book, and the piece of land story is about the Hartwell family. And, unfortunately, a lot of ranchers wear a number of hats. And so when you take a hat and you put a hat on that says CEO, I'm the CEO, you're wearing one hat. And then you go, oh my gosh, well, I'm also the CFO. So you take your hat that you've already got on and you put another hat on top of that. Yeah. And that one doesn't fit as well. And then you take the other hat that says COO and you stack that on top of that hat. Now you're wearing 3 caps. And then you take and you say, oh my gosh, I've got to market my product as well. I've got to do all those things that are responsible for in the marketing department. I add another hat on. So you wind up wearing a lot of hats, and there's only 1 or 2 of them that actually fit. But what we find in working with farmers and ranchers is that a lot of them are wearing a bunch of different hats. And I don't know why that is, but it's true. And what they don't realize is in any population of people, especially a family, there are unique strengths and gifts. Your unique abilities. There's something that each member of your family does better than any of the rest. And what I'm able to do is interview the family members and find out who's good at what, and then approach our enterprise from a business standpoint. For instance, no publicly held business would ever allow to have one key person wear all those hats.
No.
Doesn't make any sense. In your hometown, there's probably a bank, and there's a board of directors for that bank. That's the simplest explanation everybody can kind of relate to, is that, and the reason you have a board is because you have a multitude of skill sets that are helping make the best decisions possible for the enterprise. In that case, it's the bank. So I like to approach farming and ranching families from an enterprise standpoint, helping them put together their own board of directors. And sometimes that board of directors are right there in your family.
Right.
Sometimes they're not.
Yeah. And I kind of equate it to like Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys. He works with all the kids in his family and he's
Yep.
built a business to where they all have different expertise in different parts, but it's all part of the family working together based on their skill sets. And so, I use that analogy because, he was able to go from what he did to buy the Dallas Cowboys, but now the Dallas Cowboys and the Jerry Jones enterprise is a whole lot more than just a football team,
You bet it is. Yeah.
so.
Farming and ranching. I mean, we're not managing the Dallas Cowboys with most farms and ranches, but we're managing a 15, 20, $30 million enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same equivalent of importance to them as the Cowboys are to the Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
So it's the same model, and it's just that he's had the foresight to put together a continuity plan that doesn't interrupt the value and the lives of lots and lots of people.
And what I find, in my practice is that, sometimes you trust your CPA to tell you what to do. And CPAs, they're pretty good at telling you how much you owe on taxes, but they don't do hardly any planning. And so, how many F-250s do you need to have because you have a surplus of profit at the end of the year, as opposed to a longer term generational plan, and reallocate some of those dollars
Right.
with a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that comes back to one of the very first places that I start with any type of succession plan. It's called financial planning.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where my training for 35 years has been. And so I start with financial planning and putting together the plan of action for all the steps, to me, makes a lot of sense. And I find that there's usually a gap or two, and I think that you're exactly right. They rely on advisors for advice, expecting them to have a multitude of unique abilities in their advice, and I think that that's not necessarily. It's not always the case. So if we can figure out how to, put a team together so we can utilize your advisor network just the same way we do with your unique abilities within your family and your enterprise, man, you're going to win on that deal every time.
So can you talk a little bit about, I know you work nationwide, kind of like the next 10, 15, 20 years of, the magnitude of this need, I guess would be the best way to put it.
You look at the average age of the farmer and rancher in America, it's up there. It's up there above the 50s. Mm-hmm. This is a hard occupation. It's a stressful occupation. The focus right now in agriculture is on mental health, and mental health is a danger. It's a huge danger right now to these farmers and ranchers, because I actually make the case, and I believe that mental health is tied to financial health.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with any business. If it's not doing well, you're under stress. And right now, the commodity-based agriculturists, the row crop farmers, are under heavy pressure. Their input costs are much higher than they've ever been. Their commodity prices are the same or less, and their production is up. And we've had a couple of years in a row where they're not making any money, and the mental health is suffering. And so each one of the states that I work in right now has an initiative to help these farmers and ranchers get some help in that mental health space. And I encourage them, every one of them, to reach out locally, or reach out to me at agrigenerational.com, and I'll get you connected to the parties that we know about that are helping in this space, because that's not good. It adds pressure to the entire model, and that's not worth, if we can help in the financial space, fix some things or find some efficiencies or find money that they're losing unknowingly and unnecessarily and bring it back into their operational account, hey, that helps peace of mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. And what I say about most small business owners, they're really engaged in their business. And so all these extra things, like, shopping for insurance or shopping for financing or
Right.
equipment replacement, things like that, are not really in most of them's, forefront, but
Right.
it's something that if left unattended becomes a major problem.
Sure. Sure.
And so, having a good plan and a good set of resources, I would think, would be very beneficial to them.
I believe that to be the case too. Yes.
Yeah. It sounds like, 30, 40 years ago, it was kind of like the old paradigm where,
Yeah.
the farmer kind of got into the business or a rancher got into business and he was fine with all the hats. But
Right.
now the world has gotten a whole lot more complex and, commodities trading, stuff that goes, not necessarily to the local market, but it's going overseas and all that kind of stuff. When do you sell your crop? All those kinds of things. The world has gotten more global.
Sure it has. It sure has. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why most of them wearing so many different hats, you lose efficiencies there. So, I think that the greatest title that we can give some of these farmers and ranchers is the CWO, which stands for the Chief Wisdom Officer. And
Mhm.
so being able to help these families adopt a wisdom transition plan long before it's needed
Mhm.
will be huge. And if you're, let's take, for instance, you got a guy working there in a manufacturing shop there in your town, and his son wants to learn the business. Well, most business owners I know learned from the bottom up, really.
Mhm.
And I think it makes a lot of sense when you know all the different parts of the enterprise. So you would train your family members the same way you would train an employee that you want to advance. You step along beside them and you mentor them and you share your wisdom so that we don't have these major wealth transfers when you have a transition. Sometimes planned, sometimes not.
Do
So
you,
if something happens prematurely, hey, we don't have millions of dollars that are going to leave us in the form of lost opportunities, having to relearn what dad knew.
yeah.
So if we can just run along beside them and help them put together the tools to transfer that wisdom before it's necessary, we don't have an interruption. And the interruption could equate to millions of dollars in this situation. So in Piece of Land, the book, that's exactly what we did. We painted the blueprint for how a family should transition an enterprise. And we interview all family members, just like Big Mac in the book. And we look at who has unique abilities, who has different opinions. How can we utilize what we have to advance our cause within the enterprise? So, it just requires sitting and visiting. It's a great process. People are afraid of it because sometimes one of the things that we have to address is family conflict. Well, I'm not a conflict manager. I am trained to notice it and to identify it, but I'm not trained to fix it. But I have people on my team that are. So I'm glad to bring them in to help with the conflict management. Because think about it, conflict equals money
Mhm.
every single time.
Yeah.
So you're either going to deal with it now when you can, or you deal with it later when you can't. And when you can't, look, it just costs money. Lawyers are expensive.
Yeah. Absolutely.
$500 an hour from my lawyer, $500 an hour for your lawyer. Guess what? That's $1,000 an hour. How many hours are we going to spend on this?
Yeah. And the lawyers, they don't care.
I didn't say they don't care, but I know they like the model with it they use. So
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're doing what they're doing.
yeah,
And so, to me, do you see many current generational, say the 50, 55-year-olds that think about retirement?
that's part of the financial planning aspect that I bring to the table. I've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people do retirement planning well.
Hmm.
And so we get in front of that in the beginning. And I think that's one of the things that they don't plan on. And so I actually love for, when we have a chance to say, you know what, you can get a 179 deduction for buying a new pickup or a new tractor or a new bush hog or whatever. what do you think about let's putting that money to work? And they said, well, what's that mean? I said, well, I don't know. Let's model that and see. Let's run that through the model. So the reason that you're buying something is for a deduction and you don't have any cash. When you get through, you've got a piece of equipment or something like that, but you don't have cash. So I like to model that in front of them and say, all right, let's just see what does that tractor actually cost you? And what's the time value of money if you're able to do something else with that money other than buy something to avoid paying a tax? So I like to help with that part of it. And let's sure up their retirement. Let's put that plan together so that, hey, you know what? What makes more sense? Let's model it and see. I don't know, but let's just test it and run it through the model and see what it says. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my family is North Carolina tobacco farmers, and then with the big tobacco
The
lawsuit,
buyouts.
yeah, the buyouts, they got into Purdue chicken
Yep.
houses and stuff. But my uncle was the last bastion of the family, farm, and he 79 died of enormous amounts of cancer because of all the pesticides and everything. But the bottom line is, he would never think about retirement. I mean, he was going to work till the day he died, And so,
Yeah.
I know that, and my wife's father-in-law was a small business, or her dad was a small business guy, oil and gas.
Yeah.
And, he was old school. I mean, born in 1922 and, worked, pretty much most of his life. And so, there's a lot of different paradigm shifts in ways people think. And like you said, some of the conflict can be just getting the current generational to understand some of this planning is going to be necessary for you and for your family.
Right.
Because I don't think there's anybody out there, maybe there might be a few, that don't love their family and want to do best for them. So,
It's a great process. I think a lot of people are afraid of it, and they really should not be. It's if you haven't had a chance, go out to Amazon, pick up the book Piece
Yep.
of Land, PEACE, and it's not just it's a ranching story, but it's not just it's the same process for any business owner that owns their enterprise, and it's a value that you want to transfer to the next generation. Pick up Piece of Land. It's an easy read. It's a great story. Embedded into that book is the blueprint for families, enterprising families, whether farm and ranch families or whatever, to follow and reach out to us at agrigenerational.com. There's a free quiz on there if you're just trying to decide, hey, you know what, should I do anything or not? At the top toolbar on my website is a free quiz. And you can take that quiz to see how well prepared you are. It's just 20 questions. It takes you less than 5 minutes. And it'll give you a score at the end of it, 1 through 10, how well prepared you are for the transition of the next generation. So step out to my website, read Piece of Land book, agrigenerational.com, and start there. Be a great place to start. Reach out to me with questions. My phone number is 615-406-0419. And be glad to talk with you. If you've got questions, want to run something by me, if the website doesn't give you the answers you need, call me and we'll get started. How's that?
Yeah, that's really good information, and I appreciate you sharing. And like I said, we wanted to spend some time with you to kind of get the word out and what your specialty is. And like you said, it's farm and ranch kind of niche, but it's really small business, and all the challenges that small business owners have.
Yeah.
And if I had a nickel for every time someone told me, "Oh, I'm just going to work till 60 and sell my business," and
Wally,
they're
I
not doing
cannot tell
anything wrong.
you how many times I'm working with or I find people that have stayed too long in their business.
Mm-hmm.
And they're wearing so many hats. It's kind of like the old plate spinner on the Ed Sullivan show. You
Yep.
can't keep them going forever. And hats, when you're wearing so many hats, a lot of times you'll. There's probably a better way to do it if we can just sit and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for taking some time to talk with us today, and
My pleasure,
we'll,
Wally.
we'll get this information back out to you, and you and I will be talking about other ways to get more of the word out.
You
So
bet. Great to be
thank you
with
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.